Hello, YouTubers. Welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. I have 16 articles for you, and all the URLs are in the description of the video for your convenience. First one is off of BizPack Review. It says, Chuck Todd dials up the drama over pro-Trumper super PAC ad on James Comey, like a horse's head. NBC's Chuck Todd is outraged by a pro-Trump group's ad questioning James Comey's credibility, which has been assailed by both liberals and conservatives during the past year. The ad, called Showboat, will air during Comey's congressional testimony on Thursday. It was paid for by the Great American Alliance Political Action Committee and spotlights Comey's showboating as former FBI director. Wow, is James Comey running for something? Todd said on MTP Daily, I guess they're worried about the credibility of James Comey. Interestingly, Democrats accused Comey of being a partisan hack over his statements concerning FBI's multiple criminal investigations into Hillary Clinton's unsecured email server. Many demanded he be fired, but when Trump did fire him, Democrats reversed course and accused the president of obstructing justice. He thrust himself back into the spotlight by making ambiguous statements about interactions he had with President Trump. Chuck Todd claims the Showboat ad is thinly veiled bullying. This is like a horse's head in a bed, he said, referencing the famous scene from The Godfather. It's like, this is what's going to happen to anybody's reputation that crosses me. We're going to destroy you. Meanwhile, the Great American Alliance said it released the commercial on its own, and the White House has nothing to do with it. It's ironic that Todd is so concerned about character assassination of James Comey, since he had other liberals viciously slammed, since he and other liberals viciously slammed the disgraced FBI director last year for criticizing Hillary Clinton's negligence in handling top secret government information. While the liberal media is pushing the narrative that Trump obstructed justice by allegedly seeking loyalty from Comey, the fact that former CIA Director Robert Gates told CBS News last month that he felt pressured to be loyal to Barack Obama. Gates was Secretary of Defense under Obama. Meanwhile, mainstream media blithely continue their nonstop character assassination of President Trump, even if it means publishing fake news that they later have to correct. This week, CNN, MSNBC, and other mainstream media relentlessly pushed the narrative that Comey's testimony would destroy Trump, but it didn't. Similarly, National Security Agency Director Mike Rogers has emphatically denied fake news reports that Trump had pressured him to ease up on investigations into alleged collusion between Russia and the Trump camp. A bipartisan census on Capitol Hill has admitted there's no evidence of collusion after a year of exhaustive probes. And don't forget this bit of fake news Todd bleated to viewers in 2016. Says, really, Chuck Todd, you're supposed to be a journalist. What polling data backs up your reporting presidential race is over? And another one tweets out, every Republican I've talked to that isn't in Trump Tower has essentially said the presidential race is over, Chuck Todd. The next article is off of Newsmax. It says, lawyer says Trump feels totally vindicated by Comey's statement. Trump feels totally vindicated by former FBI Director James Comey's, jumped a little bit here. By former FBI Director James Comey's opening statement released Wednesday after reviewing it with his legal counsel, according to multiple reports. The president's outside attorney was prepared to go to war over Comey's testimony, according to Fox Business Network's Charles Gasparino on risk and reward. But the personal counsel released this statement Wednesday, according to reports. One of the toughest lawyers on Wall Street, Gasparino, told host Liz Clayman of Kazowitz on going to war with Comey, but after reading the statement itself, he feels he and his client, President Trump, feel pretty vindicated. Totally vindicated was the words we heard from inside the White House. Later Wednesday, CNN host Wolf Blitzer read a direct text message from Trump's personal lawyer, Mike Cohen, statement mention of the Russian dossier that alleged the Russians had compromising information on the president. Comey's statement released today needs to be carefully scrutinized as his claims that the president was concerned about the dossier, Cohen said. It must be noted that the dossier has been debunked by even the author himself. The next article is off of BizPac Review. It says Peter King makes Comey hearing prediction. Trump's going to have half of DNC drunk before noon. A Washington bar will buy a round of drinks for the House each time President Donald Trump tweets about former FBI Director James Comey during his testimony Thursday before Senate Intelligence Committee. The Union Pub posted generous offer Wednesday on Facebook saying the special will run till Comey's testimony is over or 4 p.m., whichever's earlier. The Union Pub offer came after Washington Post reporter Robert Costa tweeted that sources told him the president does not plan to put down Twitter on Thursday. May live tweet if he feels the need to respond. CMZ caught up with U.S. Representative Peter King and asked the lawmaker for his thoughts on the bar promotion. There's going to be a lot of drunks in Washington, the New York Republican replied. After confirming that the meeting starts at 9:30 a.m., King then offered a prediction saying, I'd say by 10:15, half the city will be bombed. Another prediction seen in the social media reactions to the story is that the pub will be bankrupt by Friday. There's a sample of responses from Twitter, one saying, TMZ, I think most of them stay drunk. Another one says, TMZ give Coates and Rogers a few drinks. Maybe they'll spill the beans. Another one says, to the Hill, the news should read DC bar to go bankrupt in one evening. And there's a whole slew of more of those if you want to pull up and read them for yourself. The next one's off BizPac Review. Napolitano says expected different James Comey on the witness stand. Andrew Napolitano believes James Comey's highly anticipated testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee will show a different side of the fired former FBI director. In a public Senate session on Thursday, Comey will be questioned about his encounter with President Trump and FBI investigation into alleged collusion between his election campaign and Russia. You're going to see a different James Comey, Judge Napolitano said on Fox and Friends Wednesday. You're going to see a chastened, fact-centered witness, not an FBI director lecturing the country and the Committee on the Laws, he added. He's not going to make judgments. He's not going to make legal conclusions. He's going to say what he heard, what he said, and what he thought, or try this again, what he saw and what he thought. There we go. But the senior judicial analyst for Fox News was surprised that special counsel Robert Mueller is even allowing the testimony from Comey, who was fired by Trump last month. World, a prosecutor wants from one of his witnesses to have the witness testify in another forum where the prosecutor isn't even going to be present, Napolitano said of Mueller, who is heading up the independent investigation into Russia and the Trump campaign. That's what's going to happen tomorrow, Napolitano pointed out. Mueller not going to be there to say, hey, Jim, don't answer that. Napolitano thought the president's reported nomination Wednesday of Christopher Wray to replace the FBI chief will take the wind out of his sails on the upcoming testimonies. The timing politically is brilliant if it was timed intentionally, he said. The next article is off of Liberty Writers. Ask about Loretta Lynch, what Comey said next left the room speechless. Shocking news is coming from James Comey's testimony today, and liberals are going to hate it. Investigation for sending and receiving thousands of government emails, including classified information, on a secure server. And there is a video here. It says, see Comey say it himself in the video below if you want to Listen to that. It says, according to former FBI Director James Comey's testimony today in Congress, Obama's Attorney General Loretta Lynch asked him specifically not to refer to the ongoing Hillary email probe as an investigation. Rather, she asked that he simply refer to it as a matter. What? This is a new low even for the Obama administration. Imagine why Lynch would rather call it a matter. It really was an investigation. Comey said himself that he was confused and concerned by the directive, compounding the scandal surrounding this clearly dishonest request. Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton had a secret meeting on the tarmac soon after. Comey said that in order to protect the credibility of the investigation, he felt as though he had to make an announcement of the email probe in July separately from the Loretta Lynch Justice Department. So it sounds like the liberals were right and Comey was being coerced during an investigation after all, although I don't think it is exactly what they had in mind. This is a huge story that is just now breaking, but it definitely suggests more than a little meddling by the Obama administration in the 2016 election. Thank God Hillary didn't end up winning, or we would never have known. Cool. Next. Says Comey says, no doubt Russia tried to interfere in the 2016 race. There was no doubt that Russia attempted to interfere in the 2016 elections or that the Russian government was behind the intrusions in the DNC servers and the subsequent leaks, former FBI Director James Comey testified Thursday. But at the same time, he said he is confident no votes were altered. When I left as director, I had seen no indication of that whatsoever, Comey told members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, which is investigating the potential of Russian collusion with President Donald Trump's campaign staff and interference in the 2016 election. Further, he told Intelligence Committee Chairman Richard Burr, Republican of North Carolina, that Trump never asked him at any time, to my understanding, to stop the FBI's investigation into Russian involvement in the election. However, Trump did ask him to drop the investigation into former National Security Agency Michael Flynn's contact with Russia. General Flynn, at that point in time, was in legal jeopardy, said Comey. There was an open criminal investigation in his connection with the Russian contacts and the contacts themselves. So that was my assessment at the time. I don't think it's for me to say whether the conversation I had with the president was an effort to obstruct. I took it as a very disturbing thing, very concerning, but that's a conclusion I'm sure the special counsel will work towards to find out the intention and whether that's an offense. He also said it's possible that the FBI could find evidence of Russian criminal actions that have nothing to do with the election cycle. In any complex investigation, when you turn over a rock, sometimes you find things that are unrelated to the primary investigation, criminal in nature, said Comey. Comey also testified that it is normal for foreign governments to reach out to members of an incoming presidential administration, but it's difficult to say when normal contacts cross the line. Again, it's difficult to answer in the abstract, said Comey, but when a foreign power is using special coercion or some sort of pressure to try to co-opt an American official, it's serious for the FBI and at the heart of the counterintelligence mission. Comey also commented on his decision not to pursue criminal charges against Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton, admitting it was influenced in an ultimately conclusive way by the meeting between then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and ex-President Bill Clinton. I had to do something separately to protect the credibility of the investigation, which meant both the FBI and the Justice Department, he said. Now, let me get some more articles up here right quick for work. And this just takes a second, but it seems to, I'm doing it this way, then it took, keep up with everything. And let's see, we can get one more in here. Let's see. Not. Sometimes it gets a little tricky. Keep up with what I've got going on here. I think I got them right. Okay. It's off Newsmax. No, that's the old one. Hang on. That should come up here the way I want it to. Working as fast as he can go. This one is off of Newsmax. It says Comey won't say publicly if he thinks Trump colluded with Russia. And now if we can get the hamster to scroll right down this just a tad. And it's skipping in that wheel. Come on, hamster. I said this would be faster. You're making a liar out of me. Well, why is this acting up the way it is? I don't know why he's having such a hard time. Um, well, while he's working on that, let's see if the other one is coming up yet. Well, no, it's not up yet either. All right, well, we'll just wait out the hamster. My goodness. Well, the Comey stuff, it was really in the news. I'll tell you what. Investigation was all over every news thing. They's all over it like white on rice, I'll tell you. Thanks. Hamster just running as fast as he can go here, trying to. I don't think they're going to come out with much on this Comey. Um, uh, since it was such a high point in the news, what else going on behind the scenes? They have one big old high point that everybody focuses on, and while you're watching that here, there's 45 other things going on in the background someplace that you need to be paying attention to. But we'll go ahead and cover this Comey thing here. Going. Starting to scroll for me in just a touch. We get past the picture here. Just about all I need to see of Comey for the rest of my life after all the articles I've had to wade through today. Good grief. Okay. Former FBI Director James Comey Thursday refused to answer in open session whether he believes President Donald Trump colluded with Russia. That's a question I don't think I should answer in open setting, Comey said in his testimony to the Senate Intelligence Committee. When I left, we did not have an investigation focused on President Trump, a question that will be answered by the investigation, I think. Russia investigation was frustrating, Trump, Comey said, as it was taking up so much time and energy. I think he meant the executive branch, but in the public square in general, and it was making it difficult for him to focus on other priorities, said Comey. I think what he meant by the cloud is is making it hard for me to focus on things I want to focus on. I, the president, investigation. Um, Comey admitted that he did tell Trump that he would see what he could do about the probe, but that slightly cowardly way of trying to avoid telling him we're not. It was a way of getting off the phone, frankly. Then I turned and handed it to the acting deputy attorney general. During one of the two phone conversations he documented, and jumped here. Um, Conversations he documented in his memos. His chief of staff was sitting in front of him and heard his end of the conversation. And he said he believes they were shocked as he was over the Trump request and told him that they had never experienced such. Then the conversation turned to, so what should we do with this information? It was a struggle for us because we are the leaders of the FBI. It's been reported to us, and I heard it, and now I've shared it. However, there was concern about sharing the information and infecting the investigative team. But he looks, or try this again. Still, he took the request as a directive to end the investigation. We considered whether to tell the attorney general, but we decided that didn't make it. We believed he was going to the rescue. Yeah, that wasn't right. We believed he was used. We were going to hold it, keep it in a box. Needs to stop jumping. Back down here where I can read it. Okay. Document it as we have already done, Comey said. He said, tell the president, however, that he thought with his request about dropping the Flynn investigation. What came to my mind was, be careful what you said. So I agreed. Flynn is a good guy, said Comey. The director also discussed the number of leaks. Oh, saying he does not know why Trump himself was not responsible for one leak without his Trump meeting. He told Columbia University law professor to reveal the information, kept memos, content of the documents to the media. A variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt. Well, Mr. Jumped again. Well, come on. For goodness sakes. Here, I shouldn't have bragged on him. Thought that might prompt the, well, for goodness. Hopefully he's done jumping. That might prompt the appointment council, Comey said. Friday after I got fired that I better hope there's not tapes. I woke up in the middle of the night on Monday night because it didn't dawn on me originally a corroboration of, and my judgment was I need to get that out square. So I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the reporter. See if we can get it to scroll up a little bit more. Goodness sakes. Reiterated that time he was dismissed on May the 9th under investigation. It wasn't a criminal investigation of the president, he said. Comey his statements calling Russia's involved. There should be no fuzz on this whatsoever, Comey said. They interfered in our election during the 2016 cycle. They did with purpose. They did with they did it with overwhelming technical efforts, and it was an active measure from the top of that government. There's no doubt on that. Competence, judgment of the entire intelligence community for takes. Jumping around. Well, I'm waiting. It's got a script running on it. I could tell that. As the script, we should be okay. They did it with overwhelming technical efforts, and it was an active measure campaign driven by that government. There's no doubt on that. It is a judgment of the entire intelligence community and of this committee seeing the intelligence. Close call. Comey said he couldn't answer if he thought it was odd to be concerned, as he didn't know conversations the president had on the matter. Russia with future elections, and it won't matter whether there is a Democrat or a Republican in office. They are going to come for whatever party they choose to try and work on behalf of, Comey said. They're not devoted to either, in my experience. They're about, and they will be back. Has told millions through his Twitter account not happy about the Russian investigation, but it was different in the White House. There's a big difference in kicking superior officers the Oval Office director in the eye and saying, "I hope you let this go," Comey said. I think if the agents, as good as they are, heard the president of the United that, there's a real risk of a chilling effect. That's why we kept it so tight. That's being reported about the Russian investigation, though, that is dead wrong, Comey said. The article I have is off of BizPack Review. And let's hope we do better with that one than we did with this one. Okay, it says Comey shoots himself in the foot big time, admits he leaked government documents to prompt special counsel. Former FBI Director James Comey might have put himself in big legal trouble with his own testimony. As he was doing his best to damage President Donald Trump on Thursday, Comey admitted to the Senate Intel Committee that he gave information to a friend of his, Columbia University law professor Daniel Richman, to leak to the press. Comey admitted that he did so in order to prompt a special counsel to be named. I asked a friend of mine to share the content of the memo with a reporter, he told the Senate Intelligence Committee. I didn't do it myself for a variety of reasons, but I asked him to because I thought that might prompt the appointment of a special counsel. Fox News' Catherine Herridge, why this could mean trouble for the former FBI director. I can't remember a time ever where a former FBI director has deliberately leaked the contents of a government document so it would get to a reporter in the hopes that it would prompt a special counsel investigation. One of Comey's problems is that his last public testimony here on Capitol Hill before the Senate Judiciary Committee, right out of the gate in that hearing, he took a series of questions from the Republican chairman, Chuck Grassley, and Chuck Grassley asked him whether he had an anonymous source for reporters about the Hillary Clinton email investigation or the Russian case, and James Comey testified no. Then he asked him whether he had ever authorized someone else to be an anonymous source on his behalf on the Clintons' email case and the Russian case, and James Comey said no. President Trump's personal lawyer, Mark Kasowitz, the matter will be left to authorities to investigate. Today, Mr. Comey admitted that to friends his purported memos of these privileged conversations, one of which he testified was classified. He also testified that immediately after he was terminated, he authorized his friends to leak the contents of these memos to the press in order to prompt the appointment of a special counsel, he said. He testified he only leaked the memos in response to a tweet. The public record reveals that the New York Times was quoting from the memos the day before the referenced tweet, which belies Mr. Comey's excuse for this unauthorized disclosure of privileged information and appears retaliatory. We will leave it to the appropriate authorities to determine whether this leak should be investigated along with all those others being investigated. And there's a series of tweets at the bottom of that article if you want to pull it up and read those. The next one is off of BizPac Review. It says Marco Rubio lays down the boom with killer line of questioning for Comey. Senator Marco Rubio's line of questioning early highlight much anticipated testimony of former FBI Director James Comey before the Senate Intelligence Committee. The Republican lawmaker focused on Comey's interactions with President Donald Trump, to include Trump's comment about former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and his request that Comey disclose that he was not under investigation. It was in regard to the latter that Rubio hit a home run. Isn't it weird that the only thing in this investigation that didn't leak was that the president wasn't being investigated? Rubio followed that gem up with another line of questioning that also scored, was in reference to Comey saying in his submitted remarks that Trump told him, I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He's a good guy. I hope you can let this go. Sean Davis breaks down the exchange. Comey would add, I think the circumstances were such that I was a bit stunned and didn't have the presence of mind. It seemed to raise doubts about any potential damage Trump over the issues. The reaction on social media was immediate as Rubio all but destroyed the media narrative against Trump. See if we can get it to scroll a little bit more. Hamster fell asleep. It's from all that jumping he did a few minutes ago. Sampling of responses from Twitter. Joe Biggs said, well, Marco Rubio just ended this whole thing. Another one says, extremely impressed with Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Risch this morning. Stand up job by both. says Rubio's questioning and comments outstanding. In fact, when he finished, you had to wonder why the hearing continues. And there's more if you want to pull them up and read those for yourself. Next article is off of BizPac Review. Hearing the inspiring message President Trump had for conservatives while Comey was testifying. Anyone wondering how President Donald Trump would respond to James Comey's testimony didn't have to wait long, not even until after the former FBI director finished talking to Congress on Thursday. We are under siege, you understand that, President Trump told a crowd at the Faith and Freedom Coalition conference while Comey was still testifying on Thursday, according to the Washington Post. The entrenchment interests in Washington will do everything in to try and stop us from this righteous cause, to try and stop all of you. They will lie, they will obstruct, they will spread their hatred and their prejudice. We will not back down from doing what's right, the president said. We know the truth will prevail, he told the audience. Nothing worth doing ever came easy, but we know how to fight better than anybody, and we never give up. We are winners, and we are going to fight and win and have an unbelievable future. The good news, or the try this again, the good and decent people will get the change they voted for and that they so richly deserve, he promised. And there is video in that one if you want to pull it up and view that. The next one is off of Newsmax. And it says, Trump vows to survive siege. President Donald Trump says he and his supporters are under siege, but will come out bigger and better and stronger than ever. Trump spoke Friday at the Faith and Freedom Coalition annual conference at the same time as former FBI Director James Comey was testifying before Congress. The president did not make specific reference to Comey, who says Trump tried to get him to pledge loyalty and drop an investigation into political collusion with Russia campaign aides. But in the first moments of Trump's speech, he said, as you know, and then vowed to survive and thrive. The next article is off of Newsmax. And while I'm waiting for the hamster to flip it up here real quick, I'll grab some more articles so we can keep moving on here. Okay. Still waiting on the hamster. Well, we'll give him a jolt. Prod. Okay, Trump aides say don't fire Sessions. See if we can get it stroll up. Wheel, he's trying. Well, sing y'all a song or something while we're waiting here. Oh my goodness gracious, come on. Aides to President Donald Trump are urging him not to fire Attorney General Jeff Sessions, despite rifts between the two men, sources familiar with internal White House conversations said on Wednesday. Media reports that Sessions recently offered to resign surfaced earlier this week. They added Director James Comey, who was abruptly fired from his post last month, prepared to testify in Congress on Thursday about his interactions with the president. Trump did not accept Sessions' resignation offer and is now being advised to keep his attorney general in place, at least for the time being, two sources said. and legal advisors inside the White House have told Trump over the past month that firing Sessions would create another political firestorm and make it more difficult to fill key jobs inside his administration, the sources said on condition of anonymity. The advice he's been given, but he might not listen to that advice, one of the sources said. A spokeswoman at the Justice Department declined to comment. House did not respond to a request for comment. Trump has repeatedly shrugged off advice from close aides. Earlier this week, he said the Justice Department, led by Sessions, was wrong to submit a watered-down, politically correct version of his proposed travel ban on people from several Muslim-majority countries to the Supreme Court. In government lawyers' defense, that the travel ban, which has been blocked by federal courts, was not intended as a ban on Muslims. Sessions, a former senator, offered to resign because of the tensions with Trump and to recuse himself from a federal investigation into ties between Trump's associates and Russian officials when Russia was allegedly meddling at the 2016 U.S. presidential election, according to media reports. Was one of the first senior Republican lawmakers to endorse Trump as a presidential candidate and played an important role in the campaign. He recused himself from the Russian investigation in March after he failed to disclose a meeting he had with Russia's ambassador in Washington. Were together at the White House on May the 17th when Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein surprised them both by former FBI Director Robert Mueller as a special counsel to head the investigation. After learning the news, Trump lashed out at Sessions, blaming him for recusing himself from the probe and leaving the ability to appoint an outside investigator in Rosenstein's hands, the sources said. Trump also complained that Sessions had not warned him about Rosenstein's decision. The Justice Department said Sessions played no part in the decision. Mouse, so let me retrieve the mouse. Between the mouse and the hamster, I'm having a dickens of a time this morning. We got the mouse back, and we'll get the next article up here. Liberty headlines. It says Sessions puts an end to settlement funding for Obama flavored, gee whiz. Let's get my tongue to work properly, shall we? Sessions puts an end to settlement funding for Obama-favored liberal groups. Are thrilled with a Justice Department announcement Wednesday that it will stop the practice of sharing legal penalty payments with outside advocacy groups. The Obama administration had used the practice as a way to funnel money to liberal interest groups, in effect as a backdoor subsidy for left-wing lobbyists. For example, in 2014, the Justice Department pressured Bank of America into a whopping $17 billion settlement for allegations of mortgage abuse. And then, rather than send all the money to victims of the said abuses or having it revert to the federal treasury for the benefit of taxpayers, Justice directed that millions of dollars be given to groups that advocate for or otherwise supposedly assist the sorts of people typically victimized by predatory lending. What that meant is that a slew of leftist interest groups got a lot of money. For instance, some BOA money went to a group called Neighbor Works of America, in which turned finances of a host of left-wing community organizers such as Acorn Housing, an entity related to the corrupt since shuttered Acorn organization. Settlements went to National Council of La Raza and National Urban League. Many conservatives have argued that the practice is illegal. Either way, Wednesday's decision ends it. When the federal government settles a case against a corporate wrongdoer, any settlement funds should go first to the victims and then to the American people, not to bankroll third-party special interest groups or the political friends of whoever's in power, said Attorney General Jeff Sessions. Sessions' announcement was received with great enthusiasm by conservatives. Far too often under the previous administration, defendants were coerced into making payments to political groups with little to no involvement in the matter, other than having curried favor with the Obama White House, said Senate Republican Whip John Cornyn of Texas. It is the job of Congress to decide how money recovered by government lawyers is spent. I applaud Attorney General Sessions for putting an end to this abusive practice. Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley added the crucial point that some of the payments directly contradicted Congress directives. Under the Obama administration, the Justice Department disregarded the separation of powers by repeatedly directing defendants to donate hundreds of millions of dollars to the administration's friends and allies, including those that Congress took deliberate steps to defund. These practices usurped Congress's spending authority and opened wide the door for misuse of government funds, without any oversight mechanisms. House Judiciary Committee Chairman Bob Goodlatte also praised Sessions' decision, describing the Obama practice as systematically subverting Congress's spending power. Conservative media outlets likewise rejoiced. Ian Tuttle at National Review Online wrote that Wednesday's decision ends a scandalous policy. Blog of the Libertarian Cato Institute noted commentator Walter Olson called it terrific news and a major step forward in respecting both the constitutional separation of powers and the private rights that litigation is meant to vindicate. The Wall Street Journal editorialized the decision is great news because the misuse of settlement slush funds was one of the Obama administration's worst practices. Indeed, the Journal and its columnists, such as Kimberly Strassel, criticized this Obama practice, with Strassel writing in 2015 that it was a textbook case of outrageous executive overreach. And from the moderate Chamber of Commerce, Lisa Rickard of its Institute for Legal Reform, because it will now allow the Justice Department to seek justice consistent with public interest, not how much money they can generate for outside interest groups. The Obama practice was so controversial, in fact, that it wasn't just conservatives who thought it was out of line. Left-leaning editor-columnist Jenna Green of the National Law Journal and American Litigation Daily, clearly not a Sessions fan, wrote a piece headlined, "Jeff Sessions is right. It's a problem to dole out settlement money to third-party groups." Writers at the liberal Huffington Post, of course, had a different view, loudly defending Obama's policy. The logic of the settlement practice, they said, was that the bank to pay groups that work on behalf of the victimized community would help repair some of the damage and make the community less susceptible to fraud in the future. Then again, the same Huffington Post column dismissed the well-accepted and copiously reported stories about Acorn as wrongdoing. From that perspective, logic is well open to interpretation. The next article is off of Western Journalism. This calls to recuse herself from Trump travel ban case, and there is video in this if you want to pull it up to view that. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg faces calls from many corners to recuse herself from the High Court's deliberation of President Donald Trump's temporary travel ban order, given her stated toward the chief executive. The Supreme Court set Monday, June the 12th, as the deadline for challengers to the travel ban to submit their responses. The Trump administration has requested expedited proceedings in the case, meaning a ruling to lift or keep in place a Fourth Circuit order blocking implementation of the order could happen relatively soon. Ginsburg was very local, try that again. Ginsburg was a very vocal opponent of Trump's presidential candidacy, disparaging him in the media on multiple occasions last summer. He has no consistency about him, she told CNN last July. He says whatever comes into his head at the moment. He really has an ego. How has he gotten away with not turning over his tax returns? When asked by the Associated Press how the Supreme Court might be affected by a Trump presidency, she said, "I don't want to think about that possibility. Then everything is up for grabs." Days later, Ginsburg told the New York Times, "I can't imagine what this place would be. I can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president." She added that the prospect of Trump as president reminded her of something her late husband used to say: "Now it's time for us to move to New Zealand." Greg Jarrett, in a piece for Fox News, notes that federal law requires that any justice shall disqualify himself or herself in any proceeding in which his impartiality might reasonably be questioned. He shall also disqualify himself where he has a personal bias or prejudice concerning a party. Additionally, attorney David Wisen, in an op-ed published in The Hill on Monday, writes that the Judicial Code of Conduct is very clear regarding Ginsburg's anti-Trump statements and her need to recuse herself in the travel ban case. The code states that a judge should not publicly endorse or oppose a candidate for public office. The code further states that a judge should act at all times in the manner that promotes public confidence in the integrity and impartiality of the judiciary. On July the 13th, the New York Times editorial board rebuked Ginsburg after her series of anti-Trump remarks, stating that Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg needs to drop the political punditry name-calling. A day later, Ginsburg issued a statement. "On reflection, my recent remarks in response to press inquiries were ill-advised, and I regret making them. Judges should avoid commenting on a candidate for public office. In the future, I will be more circumspect." Last fall, liberal Harvard law professor Alan Dershowitz said that Ginsburg should recuse herself from all cases involving President Trump, given her past statements. Jarrett concludes his op-ed, "The noble traditions of the Supreme Court will be compromised should Ruth Bader Ginsburg decide she is above the law and beyond the scruples it demands." The next article I have, Fox News, election, hung parliament projected in shock defeat for conservatives. An exit poll projected a hung parliament general election Thursday and what would be a crippling political defeat for Prime Minister Theresa May's conservative government. Poll, commissioned by the UK's three main broadcasters and released after the polls closed at 10 p.m., projected the Tories to hold 314 seats, down 16 from their total at the end of the last parliament. The Labour Party was forecast to gain 37 seats for a total of 266. The Scottish National Party was projected to lose 20 seats for a total of 34. Center-left Liberal Democrats were projected to have 14 seats, up 5 from the last parliament. "It is still very, very early in the evening," said Northern Ireland Secretary James Brokenshire. "It's too early in the night to be drawing conclusions." The forecast result: pound to plummet more than 2 cents against the dollar, falling from $1.29.55 to $1.27.52 late Thursday. Some investigators worrying that the lack of clear conservative majority would weaken the next government's hand in the upcoming negotiations to leave the European Union. Officially, a party needs to win 326 seats to gain a majority in the 650-member House of Commons. However, the actual magic number is closer to 323. The Speaker does not vote, and members from the Sinn Féin party, which won 4 seats in the last general election in 2015, do not appear at Westminster. Though the Conservatives would remain the largest single party in the projected results, puts Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, long thought unelectable even by members of his own party, tantalizingly close to the threshold of number 10 Downing Street. However, the Liberal Democrats have repeatedly ruled out forming a governing coalition with either the Conservative Labour or try this again, either the Conservatives or Labour, citing policy differences over the UK leaving the European Union. The result could lead to the end of her tenure as Prime Minister and Conservative Party leader, and a round of finger pointing over how an election many thought was lost. Craig Oliver, a spokesman for former Prime Minister David Cameron, told Sky News that if the exit poll was accurate, there will be deep and lasting shock in party headquarters that May's gamble to call an early election had backfired. It was the biggest gamble a politician has taken in a long time, Oliver said. That exit poll is right, it's failed. In late April, the Conservatives had led Labour by 21 points in an average of the major national polls, and May was considered preferred choice for Prime Minister over Corbyn, a 68-year-old socialist who has opposed British military interventions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya, has fought tougher anti-terrorism laws for decades. A stalwart of Labour's, Corbyn also shared platforms with Irish Republicans in the years when the IRA was setting off bombs in Britain. The 60-year-old May, who took over as Premier after Cameron's resignation following the outcome of last June's Brexit referendum, had called the election 3 years ahead of schedule. She had envisioned a vote as the referendum on her government's ability to negotiate Britain's departure from the European Union. But Brexit failed to emerge as a major issue in the campaign, as both the Conservatives and Labour said they would respect voters' wishes and go through with the divorce. The tenor of the campaign changed after two Islamist terror attacks in 12-day span and killed 29 people, injured hundreds more. The attacks brought renewed and harsher scrutiny to May's 6-year tenure as Home Security, or Home, try that again, 6-year tenure as Home Secretary, Britain's top law enforcement official. In the wake of May 22nd suicide bombing at an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester and the June 3rd attack on London Bridge in the heart of the capital, Corbyn slammed May for overseeing massive cuts to police forces as part of a larger spending reduction under the Cameron premiership. You cannot protect the public on the cheap, Corbyn said over the weekend. The police and security service must get the resources they need, not 20,000 police cuts. In response, May insisted that her government had protected the counterterrorism policing budget, increased the number of armed police officers after several years when it fell, and funded the intelligence services to hire 1,900 more staff. She also vowed to crack down on terrorism suspects, adding that if our human rights laws stop us from doing it, we will change the laws so we can do it. Were not the only reason May lost ground in the poll. The Prime Minister's campaigning style was criticized as stiff and lackluster, and some conservative policy proposals got a hostile reception, including a plan to make pensioners pay for more of their care. He revealed himself to be an unexpectedly savvy campaigner and unveiled several promises that proved popular with the public, including increased spending on the National Health Services, police, as well as the nationalization of railroads and utilities. Rachel Sheard, who cast her vote near the site of the London Bridge attack, said the election had not gone as expected and that it certainly wasn't about Brexit. I don't think that's in the hearts and minds of Londoners at this minute, not nearly as much as security is, said Sheard, 22. It was very scary on Saturday. While security was on many voters' minds, it was far from the only issue. It's important, but it's only one issue among several, said 68-year-old Mike Peacroft. I wouldn't necessarily say, obviously, at my end of the age spectrum, I'm more interested in things like pensions and so forth, NHS healthcare, plus schooling. Those are really my main concerns. In her final message to voters, May tried to put the focus back on Brexit. I can only build that better country and get the right deal in Brussels with the support of the British people, she said. So whoever you have voted for in the past, if that is the future you want, then vote Conservative today and we can all go forward together. Corbyn told supporters at his final rally that Labour's campaign had changed the debate and given people hope. Hope that it doesn't have to be like this, that inequality can be tackled, that austerity can be ended, that you can stand up to the elites and the cynics. This is the new center ground, he says. And the final article that I have for you this morning is off of Liberty Writers. And it says, Congressional Fast and Furious report condemns Obama's Justice Department holder. Following Operation Fast and Furious, a strategy by bureaus of alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, led to the death of Border Patrol agent Brian Terry, former Attorney General Eric Holder has been under fire for politicizing the issue, details to be kept quiet. In a 273-page report released yesterday, Representative Jason Chavez, Republican of Utah, and Senator Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, slammed Holder and the U.S. Department of Justice both for hiding details and for brushing off Terry's family. Grassley also testified yesterday in front of the House Oversight Committee, chaired by Chavez, during a public hearing on Wednesday. The Department of Justice and the ATF had no intention of looking for honest answers and being transparent, said Grassley, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. Operation Fast and Furious began in 2006 when the Arizona field office of the United States Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms and Explosives intentionally legal buyers who buy guns on behalf of those not allowed to purchase guns to buy weapons. The ATF hoped to track the guns back to drug cartel leaders in Mexico to arrest them. Despite hesitation by many, including the ATF field agents and licensed gun dealers, the operation lasted 5 years. During that time, ATF monitored the sale of about 2,000 firearms, most of which were never recovered. Absent from this strategy was any modicum of public safety, Chavez said. ATF failed in its mission to protect our communities from violent criminals and the illegal use and trafficking of firearms. Terry was killed in December of 2010, and guns from Fast and Furious were found at the scene of the crime. The details of the operation slowly emerged in the aftermath, but according to Chavez and Grassley's report, Holder didn't offer much help. When the Terry family pleaded for answers, the DOJ considered them a nuisance. It is what we will have to expect from this woman and Terry's brother for the rest of the case, Assistant U.S. Attorney General, Assistant U.S. Attorney John Evans said when Terry's stepmother asked for answers, according to the report. Further, members of the DOJ, including Holder, were said to have ignored congressional oversight. Much more likely is the reverse. Will provide only some and withhold a substantial number, and they concern not just the murder investigation, but also the long-standing Fast and Furious investigation. Legal counsel, special counsel Paul Colvin said in an email about how the DOJ would respond to Congress's request for information on the report. Colburn and Office of Legislative Affairs Assistant Attorney General Ron Welch both mentioned efforts not to tell everything to Grassley. It would embolden him in the future fights and would use up a lot of material that we will eventually need to release to Congressman Isaiah. Welch said, referring to the former chairman of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And there were instances where the DOJ seemed much more influenced by maintaining its political reputation than by providing information. I don't want to jinx it, but it really is astounding that the plan worked so far, Deputy Attorney General James Cole said in an email to Holder. And there are comments at the bottom of that article if you want to pull those up and read those for yourself. And that's all I have for you this morning. So if you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up. Share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done that. Informed. Have a great day.